viewers, my name's Cara. Today I want to go over the viewer survey that I did a while back, last year. This was a while ago. You may remember I chose to do a viewer survey to learn a little bit more about my audience base using SurveyMonkey, which I then found out as I was doing it I could only do 10 questions at a time with the free version, so I made it in 2 parts. And then after you all started submitting your responses, I learned that I could only get up to 100 responses with the free version, and I would have to pay to upgrade to see more. Now, I didn't end up getting very many more than 100 responses anyway, so instead of paying to see a few more responses, I decided to just go through all of the results with the first 100 respondents that I got, and it creates these graphs and all kinds of things like this. After this, somebody tipped me off to the fact that Google actually has a forms section where you can create forms and surveys, so in the future I will be using that. I had no idea that existed until after this. So thank you to the people who told me about that. I use it all the time now for my online courses and all kinds of things. I love surveys. I love this kind of work. So here we go. I'm just going to go through all of them. So there are 20 questions in total. So the first question was just, what is your age? And I used a lot of the presets that SurveyMonkey has for a lot of these basic questions. So these are the age ranges that they already had as presets for what is your age. And unsurprisingly, the majority of my viewers who responded to this survey, I should say also, at this time I have something like 17,000 going on 18,000 or so subscribers, or I did at the time of doing this, and I regularly get some number of hundreds of views per video, so I know that not everyone who is subscribed watches every video right as it comes out. A lot of people may wait until later to watch them, and then the views go up over time, but also, so this is a very small percentage because not all of those people chose to respond. Like I said, I only got a little bit over 100 responses out of hundreds of people who watch my videos, out of thousands of people who are subscribed to my channel. So this is just a little look-see. But unsurprisingly, the majority of people were in my age group, in their 20s. Absolutely no respondents to the survey 60 or older, a few 17 or younger. Question 2, in what country do you currently reside? I did add some of the ones that I knew that I had views from, but I also just used the presets. So the majority of people who responded to this live where I live, in the United States. Got a few from Canada and the UK, a few from Australia, which I knew, and then other, I have these listed to the side here. This is where people specified. So 3 people specified they were from Denmark, 1 person just said D, so I don't know if that was another Denmark, but I do know at least 1 person from Denmark. The rest of you I did not know specifically. Hello. And then 1 person each from all of these other, gave all of these other answers. So Germany, Latvia, New Zealand, hey, I should have known that too, Australia and New Zealand. Poland, but a US citizen, cool, alright. Puerto Rico, Romania, South Africa. I went to college with a few people from South Africa. Actually, there was a lot of international students where I went to college or undergraduate school. Spain, and Sweden. So hello to all of you. Which group most describes your race? This is one that I used the presets on because I didn't necessarily think that I knew any better about how people define race, so I just used the presets on this one. Then, as you can see, the some other race please specify section is over in the corner there, and 1 person self-identified as Latina, at which point I realized, I was checking this, midway through, I realized that that was not one of the presets that SurveyMonkey, allowed. So I put Hispanic or Latinx, which now I'm looking at that, why did I put Hispanic? Because I know that Hispanic refers to the language. What am I doing? Anyway, so after that, a couple more people said that they identify as Latino, Latina, Latinx, which is the gender-neutral form. Most people who watch my channel identify as white. We had a few Black or African American, no American Indians or Native American. That was a preset. I think I put in Native American. Some Asian, no Native Hawaiian. A few people listed that they identify as being from multiple races, and then the some other race listed white and Romani gypsy, but I pass as white. European and Maori, that was one person who said they identify as both. Latina, polyethnic, and one person said they prefer not to answer. This one I really have to zoom in on for you. I have to zoom in on it myself. This was a big one. This was, do you personally identify with any of the following religions? Please select all that apply. The first one was paganism, and then in parentheses said the next question will get into specific types of paganism. So this was just like, if you identify in any way with paganism, check this, and we're going to get into the specifics of what type of pagan later. But so that's where I was starting. And I put in the full list here because it shortens it at the side. You can't read the whole thing. So like the next one, the full thing said Satanism, parentheses, I'm putting this here instead of in the pagan list, even though I consider some types of Satanists to be pagan as well. And then the rest of these were all a lot of presets. Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Shinto, Native American, inter or non-denominational, Unitarian Universalist, agnostic, atheist, no religion, or other. Please specify. I thought this was interesting because a lot of people who identify as atheist would identify as that being no religion, but those were able to be two different things. So people could select anything they want here, so the same person could have selected multiple things, and I can view that on my SurveyMonkey account, but I don't have that on here. So a lot of people, unsurprisingly, said they identify in some way with paganism. We had a few Satanism, slightly more Christianity, slightly less Catholicism than general Christianity, and then Protestantism, so we kind of put those together probably. Some respondents said they identify in some way with Buddhism and Native American spiritualities, Unitarian Universalism as well, which is not super surprising since I used to attend a UU church and I made a lot of videos about it, so some of those have found their way to my channel. Agnostics, atheists, and no religion were about the same, and then other. This is the list of what people said other. So the first person said, I was Christian, I've called myself atheist, agnostic, but honestly, I'm just lost. I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out. That's totally valid. Tons of people are in that place. One person responded ACIM, which I am remembering now that I forgot to look up. Oh, okay, so it's the acronym for A Course in Miracles, which I did not realize that people considered a religious identity. So there's a thing that I learned. And then we have deist, Greek Orthodox, Shinto and Norse paganism, transitioning from Catholic to pagan. One person said Wiccan and one person said witch. Now these two last ones surprised me at first because I thought, well, why didn't they just say pagan? But then I remembered that not all witches identify as pagan, but I was confused as to why the Wiccan didn't say that they identified as pagan. But again, remember, I said that people could check all that apply. So I did look at what those two specific people, now this is anonymous, but I am able to see what each person answered for their other things. So I know that the person who wrote in Wiccan was just specifying Wiccan, but they also checked that they identify with paganism. Now, we'll see on the next one that Wiccan is part of the umbrella of paganism in my next question. So this person was just specifying. And then the person who identified as a witch identified both as an atheist and as a witch, but does not identify as a pagan. Good to know. On the next question, then, we see it was, if you answered paganism for your religion in the previous question, what specific type or types of paganism does your path follow? And this was another thing where they could check all that apply. So we're going to start with the left column. I put these into two. So these bars are 10% increments, so almost 30% answered that they identify in some way with general paganism, which I identified as pre-Christian, non-Abrahamic religion, but I don't follow a specific type, and this is the way I usually describe that. So general pagans, almost 30%. Very nearly 30%, like maybe 29%, answered general neo-paganism, or this is one way they identify. We've got Norse paganism, some Asatru, Celtic paganism also in the upper 20%, Druidry only about, looks like 11 or 12% there, Hellenism, Chemeticism, and Etruscan paths, a little bit there, Stragaria, ceremonial magic, about the same. Thelema, maybe one or two people identified as that. No one selected OTO or the Golden Dawn. About 14%, it looks like folk magic. Nobody identified with hoodoo, voodoo, or I I think I put Santeria there. Got some identifying with shamanism and the neo-shamanism. Traditional Wicca, which I identified as Gardnerian, Alexandrian, Algard, Blue Star, Fairy, etc. Any specific tradition of Wicca. And then the next one was Wicca in beliefs and practice, but not within a tradition, such as eclectic or solitary practice, outside of a tradition. So we've got a vast majority more people identifying with solitary or eclectic forms of Wicca than with traditional Wicca, but still about 10% of people who answered this survey who watch my channel identify with traditional Wicca in some form. And then eclecticism, almost 30% as well. Looking over into the next column, we have general witchcraft. So not necessarily Wicca, but identifying with witchcraft. I have about, looks like 6% reclaiming tradition of witchcraft, which is the tradition that I am growing to be a bigger part of. A few more than that identify with women's spirituality. Nobody who answered this survey identifies with men's spirituality, such as radical fairies or any other specific men's spirituality group. Got some goddess worship. Atheist pagans and non-theist pagans, blended paths such as Christo-pagan, Christian or Jewish witchcraft, etc. We had a few respondents, as well as techno-paganism had a few. Wow, there are so many types of pagans! I just put that in there, and some people decided to respond to that, which I appreciate. So about 15% of you were like, wow, there really are a lot of types of pagans. I know, right? About 4 people said that was not applicable because they didn't answer pagan in the previous question, and about 11 people, it looks like, said something not on this list, and then they specified below. So here was this. So the first person said, I also believe in a god. I don't know if that was just them specifying based on the other things that they selected, because identifying as some form of paganism does not mean that you don't believe in a god. So that must just be something that they felt like they wanted to clarify or specify. And then some other people listed pantheistic, Baltic paganism, Shinto, which was part of the previous question but not under the umbrella of paganism. I try to find wisdom from many paths, including all kinds of paganism and Japanese Shinto and Taoism as well. Nature worship and animism, basically how you identified in your labels video, which is a video that I made on PaganPerspective. Pop culture and chaos magic, and then kitchen or garden/green. So I'm assuming that was just like specifying that instead of general witchcraft, that they identify with kitchen witchcraft or garden or green witchcraft. But that would be part of witchcraft for the purposes of what I was asking in this question. I didn't get into specific types and paths of witchcraft other than specific traditions. Cool. The next question is gender. How do you identify? So the vast majority, almost 60% of people answered that they identify as a woman, which I identified as either a cisgendered woman or a trans MTF woman. But if you identify as a woman. So the majority of people who answered this identify as a woman, and about 25-26% identify as a man. Again, that is cis or transgender. Non-binary and genderqueer had some respondents. A little more gender fluid, a few respondents of agender and transgender, about 26-ish% identify as cisgender, which I defined there for people who may have not heard the term before, which means you identify with the gender that is typically associated with the sex that you were assigned at birth. Two-spirited, I think, might have already been on there, or maybe I added that, but no one identified that way. And a couple people identified as something not on this list, which I guess I didn't include a place for them to say what that was, so I apologize. But I'm glad we have some gender diversity here. The next question was sexuality, how do you identify? And an additional response that someone shared was that they consider their romantic and sexual attraction to be separate. So sexually they identify as asexual, and that's what they answered here, but romantically they identify as panromantic. And that is a thing I know that some people have their romantic and sexual identities and preferences are different. For me, they are the same, but that's not the case for everybody. So I was asking about sexuality here, which this person knew to say, like, these are separate for me. So I'm not sure if for everybody else they are separate or if they consider them the same. But at least sexuality-wise, we had a few people who identify as asexual or ace, demisexual. In the upper 20 percentages of bisexual identifiers, which makes sense because I identify as bisexual or pansexual, and I talk about identifying as bisexual a lot in my videos, so that's, again, something that people may have seen in my videos. We had a little over 10% identify as pansexual or omnisexual, a small percentage identify as homosexual or gay or lesbian, slightly larger percentage identify as queer. The majority of people who watch my channel who responded to this survey identify as heterosexual, and we have a small group of polysexual or something not on this list. The next question is one that was just available on SurveyMonkey, and I thought, yeah, cool, sounds good. So I changed the wording to be, generally speaking, do you usually think of yourself as a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or something else? The majority of you identify as something else, and then independent was the second highest. Democrat was the third highest in the upper 20s, and about 5% identify as Republican. This did not surprise me based on the kind of things that I talk about and my channel. This makes sense. The ninth question was, do you have any physical or mental disability which may be visible or invisible to others? And the options were, yes, I have a physical disability, yes, I have a mental disability, yes, I have both, or no, I have neither. And I just included which may be visible or invisible to others because a lot of the times we think of mental disabilities as things that we can't see, so like things that you wouldn't necessarily know are going on with a person because you can't see them, and like physical disabilities may be something that you can see, but they may also not be. Like it might be a health issue that is considered just an issue. I mean, I don't even necessarily like using the word disability, but I think that's what was given here, so I just went with it. I would prefer actually to use another word because I don't necessarily think that things are always disabling in that way, but I am unsure what else to say other than just issues, because that's what I call mine, is like I have mental issues, like my own situation. But anyway, this is how the question was asked at the time, and so a few people answered that they have a physical disability that is either visible or invisible. Quite a few in the lower 30s said yes, mental. A little over 10% said yes, both. And the majority, just a little over 50% of respondents said no, I have neither. And I would just like to point out here that while the majority of people who watch my channel and who responded to this have neither physical or mental disabilities as they would characterize them, there is a good amount, like over 30% of people who said they have mental something or other that might be an invisible thing. And so especially over the internet, you know, we never really know what's going on with people, and so when we interact with people, you know, sometimes we assume everybody's like us, but really people have got other things going on. There are some with physical disabilities watching, there are some with both, so yeah, just stuff to keep in mind. The last question on the first survey was, are you someone who believes in treating all people equally? Not to be the same, but to be treated equally, taking differences into account, on the basis of identities like gender, sexuality, race, religion, size, disability, and so on, and works to fight everyday injustice and oppression. Most of you, about 65%, said absolutely. Absolutely, I believe in treating all people equally on the basis of all their different identities, and I work to fight everyday injustice and oppression. About, looks like 18%, 17-18% said, I'm getting there little by little, I do what I can and keep learning, which is a fabulous place to be. Somewhere around 13-14%, it looks like, said, it's important to me, but I don't currently do a lot to work toward that, / I don't know what to do. So these are people maybe who would like to be doing something but just don't really know what to do yet, or haven't done a lot of research into what they can be doing, but they care about it. Nobody said, not at all, I don't believe in this at all. But a few people did say, it's not really important to me, and I don't see these things as an issue. Now, as I said, I can see the other answers of what people have said, so I was curious, what types of people answered these types of things, like treating people equally on the basis of their identities, is not important to me. I don't see these things as an issue. Because typically we think of people who don't see these things as an issue as being parts of communities and having identities that aren't affected by these things. So I looked it up, and all of the people who answered that are all from the United States. 75% are white, and 75% identify as men. They all identify with types of pagan paths that are from white cultures. But interestingly enough, 50% of the people who answered this way also identified as having some kind of mental disability, either visible or invisible. So, and 25% identified as something other than heterosexual. 25% identified as something other than the sexualities that I had given, and also as multiracial. So this was not all just people who tick all of our typical privilege boxes. Some of the people who said, I don't really get why these things are an issue, are people who are being affected by these issues because they have self-identified as multiracial, not heterosexual, not part of a, traditional religion. All of these people are not part of a traditional, monotheistic, Abrahamic religion, so all of them are affected by pagan rights issues. So it's just interesting to me to hear when people who are affected, and really all people are affected by these things, even if we're not part of that identity because we live within the society that is affecting these things. But it's interesting to me to see when there are people who directly identify as parts of the communities that are being affected who say, it's not really important to me, I don't see these things as being an issue. And maybe that just means they're able to handle them on their own, but again, just an interesting thing. The second survey talked a little bit more about watching my videos and things you enjoy about my videos. So the first question in that was, how long have you been watching my videos? And it ranged from forever, aka the 7 years that I've been doing this at the time. So 7 years. So when did I do this survey? It's been a while. And then all the way to very recently discovered. So the majority of people had been watching since 2015. A few people had very recently discovered it within the past few months. I got a lot of people in 2012, it looks like. That's when I graduated from college and started posting more, so that makes sense. And fewer than 10% have been watching since 2009, 2010, so for a pretty long time. Second question was, are you subscribed to my channel? Like 91% or something said, yes I am. A few said, I watch, but I'm not subscribed. And a few more than that, like 6%-ish, said, nope, I don't have an account, I just look up videos I want to watch. I included that because I met some people who said, I don't have a YouTube account, I just look up your videos. So I knew that some people do that. So quite a few people watch but aren't subscribed or don't have an account. And I mean, when I say quite a few, it's like maybe 10%. Just so everybody knows, because not all of you responded to this, subscriber counts really help out YouTubers. So it's worth it if you really support someone to create an account just to subscribe to them, even if you don't want to use the account, because there's a lot of things that we have access to as YouTubers that are determined based on our subscriber count, and also now YouTube has redone some things based on our watch time. So if people aren't watching our videos enough, the subscriber count doesn't really matter as much. Like I said, there's like something like 17,000 plus subscribers to my channel, but I only get regularly like a few hundred views. So if my views fall below a certain threshold, they will not consider me a YouTube partner anymore. And a lot of my other friends on YouTube have been affected by that recently, because they may or may not have the subscriber threshold, but if you're not actually watching regularly, it doesn't matter if you're subscribed anymore. They're also looking at, it does matter if you're subscribed, but it doesn't just matter. So if you subscribe, but then never watch the videos, it's also harming some smaller channels. So just fun stuff to talk about, I guess. Ugh. Okay, next question. Why did you start regularly watching or subscribe to my channel, KeyWitch772? The majority of people, unsurprisingly, said it was for the paganism spirituality content. Few people started watching or subscribed for the LGBT plus content or the t-shirt recon DIY fashion content, which I know I don't do a lot of anymore, but a few people started or like first found those videos. Nobody started because of the vlog content or the theater and acting stuff, and then a little over 10% of people said, I just ended up here one day and you seemed cool, so I stuck around. Thank you to those people, you're awesome. Next question was, why do you continue to watch or stay subscribed? What content do you enjoy? now, and this was a select all that apply. So 90% of people said they stay watching for the paganism and spirituality content. About 35-ish% said for the LGBTQ plus content. Less than 10% said for the t-shirt recon DIY fashion content. They are patiently waiting for more. Because again, I don't do a lot of that. 50% of you said you continue watching for the vlogging in general. A little less than 20% said for the theater-related content. And about 75% said because I enjoy you as a person / I'll watch anything you post. Thank you. That's awesome. It's good to know. Question 5 was, if you've seen them, how do you feel about the slightly more political topics? I've posted some random ones here and there in the past, but there have been more lately at the time that I was doing this survey. Choose the answer that comes closest to describing how you feel. So the majority of people said, I like them, it's interesting to me, and I like hearing your take on these issues. Little over 20% said, I love them, I think it's important content, and I love hearing your opinions and experiences. And a little less than 30% said, they're not my favorite, but I enjoy hearing your opinions and experiences, so I watch them. So those were the top 3 answers. Most of you like them, slightly less said they're not my favorite, but I watch them because I like your opinions and hearing your experiences. And then I love them, it's really important content, and I love hearing your opinions and experiences. And then as we go down, we find fewer than 10% responded, it's just more content, I'll watch anything you post, I'm indifferent to the specific type of content. Very few said, I don't like them, I don't think this kind of content belongs on your channel. To those people, I would just remind you that whatever I feel like talking about belongs on my channel, and my channel is about my life, and a lot of the identities that I hold are political. So caring about the things that I care about and the types of people in the communities that I care about is inherently political. So if I talk about political things now and then, it's because it's part of my life, and my channel is about my life, so it definitely belongs on my channel. A few more people than that said, I don't like this type of content, it makes me uncomfortable or is something I don't enjoy getting into, so I prefer not to watch. I totally get that. It makes me uncomfortable sometimes to make them. So absolutely, if it's something that you don't feel like you would want to watch or that you will feel uncomfortable watching, you are welcome not to watch those videos. Hopefully it doesn't make you not want to watch any of my videos ever, but you're always allowed to skip individual videos that you don't particularly want to watch. So I get that. I get it. Nobody said I hate them. I think the stuff you're talking about is bullshit. So thank you for that. But a few people, looks like maybe 3 to 4% did say, I'm not sure how I feel about it, I'm mostly just confused about why it's relevant. And so again, that just goes back to when I'm talking about issues, it's because they apply to my life. It's something that I care about. It might be something about the LGBT plus community. It might be about pagan rights. It might be about gender identities. It might be about, oh gosh, I don't know, any number of things. The environment, veganism, you know, all these things. Whatever things are important to me and who I am as a person, a lot of those things might get political because those are all political identities to have. Pretty much anything outside of the mainstream of what everyone expects gets to be political. So that's why it's relevant to me and my channel, but also these are things that I think are important for people to paying attention to in the world, in making the world a better place for people who aren't just that straight arrow mainstream identity all the time. So that's why it's relevant. The next question I asked was, do you also watch the collab channel PaganPerspective, which I was the co-founder of, and I am the Tuesday host. Most of you said, yes, I watch, but I mainly watch a few of the people on it who I like best. Yep, I get that. I feel like that's a lot of the people who watch the channel watch it, but they only watch specific hosts. The next highest amount of people, it looks like, was a tie between I watch it occasionally but nothing regularly, and yes, I watch all of it, which is great because I thought those would be like the minority of people, but yeah, pretty good amount, like almost 20%. That's pretty good. Yes, but I only watch your Tuesday videos was the next highest amount, about 15%. A few said, no, I haven't heard of it before. So if that was you, go check it out. It's a channel that I co-founded in 2009, and we answer topics from our viewers about paganism and our varying paths. And the hosts are from all different types of paths of paganism, so we all answer the same question from all of our differing perspectives. It's called the Pagan Perspective, and I am the Tuesday host. And then a few people said, no, it's not really my thing. That's cool. Thanks for watching my channel. Next question was about my social media. Which of my other online platforms do you read, watch, or follow? Check all that apply. Almost 70% said you follow my Facebook page, which is good to know because I've tried to be more involved with that recently. Next highest amount was my Instagram. The next highest amount was my blog and my Etsy shop that they've either made a purchase or follow the shop in general just to see what's going on. That's super cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. Twitter was the next highest in like the upper 20s, which by the way, I don't really use Twitter a ton anymore. When I do, it's occasionally I go on there and I look at everything I've missed and I like read a bunch of articles because I follow like Pagan and stuff like that where people share articles and then I retweet the articles. So that's the majority of what I do on Twitter now, and that's also where I find a lot more of my political stuff. That's there. Fewer than 10% said you don't follow any of my other social media, just YouTube. I encourage you to follow me on the other places because you can find out a lot more stuff about what else I'm doing. But thanks for watching the YouTube. The next question was, do you sponsor my videos on Patreon? I know there's not a ton of people who sponsor them, so this was more just me figuring out how many of the people who sponsor me are also the people filling out the surveys. So 8 or 9? It looks like 8 or 9% of the people who responded to this survey, which this is the second survey, and fewer people responded to the second survey than responded to the first one. So not everybody who did the first one continued to do the second one. But anyway, a couple people said not currently, but I have in the past, because sometimes people sponsor for a little bit, for a few months or part of a year when they can, and then they don't when they can't. So that's cool. I know there are people who have sponsored in the past who don't now. About 40% said no, but I follow the posts and I may sponsor one day. And about 45% of you said no. Thank you for your honesty. This was just another thing I thought would be cool to know about my viewership. Do you have children? In this case, I was referring to human children, not fur babies. So about 5%, it looks like, said yes, I have one child. About 8% said yes, I have more than one. 1 or 2%, yes, my partner has children. Few more than that said I have none of my own, but I help raise children. A few of you said yes, I have children and they are grown. 80% of the people who responded said, no, I do not have children. And that also makes sense to me because I do not have children. And so it makes sense that a lot of the people who watch my videos very strongly identify with me in various different ways, not only by identifying as pagan, being, identifying as bisexual, but also not having children. Things like that. But yeah, so cool. I wanted to get a sense of that. How many of you watching my channel are parents or involved guardians or other family members? And then the last question was, what are your dietary choices like? The options were, I eat anything I'm not allergic to that I also like, obviously. I have a lot of restrictions due to allergies, but I eat most other things. I eat fish and no other meat, pescatarian. I eat meat but only a small number of kinds that I like, such as only chicken or only beef, etc. I'm a vegetarian. And then I clarified that means no fish, because I do know a lot of people who for some reason think that fish don't count as meat, so they identify as vegetarian, but then you find out they eat fish, and I'm like, no, that's different. So vegetarian, no meat, but other animal products. The next one was I follow a vegan diet, meaning I consume no animal products or byproducts. I may or may not also be fully vegan in my entire lifestyle, not using any products that contain animal byproduct, but this question is specifically about diet. And then I included an option for, it depends on where I am or when. I may be vegan or vegetarian at home but eat some meat when I go out, or vegan at home and vegetarian when I go out, or I may be meatless a certain amount of days of the week and eat meat on other days. Anything in this realm was included in this last question, and I included that because I have friends who have dietary choices in all of those areas. So, like, I have a friend who eats meat 2 days a week or 3 days a week, but then is vegetarian the rest of the week. I know a lot of people who participate in Meatless Monday, where they don't eat meat 1 day of the week and may for the rest of the week, or may not because they don't eat a lot of meat anyway. But that's why I included that last question. So the majority of you said I eat anything I'm not allergic to, that I also like. The next highest amount was that some kind of, it depends on where I am or when, there might be some blending, I'm not strictly one thing or another, etc., etc. The next highest amount was a little more than 10% said I eat meat but only a small number of kinds that I like, such as only chicken or only beef. That was me before I went fully vegetarian. I only ate chicken. I had given up pork and steak and all kinds of other specific meats years before. I stopped eating pork way earlier. And I was down to like hamburgers, specifically at my grandma's house, like when grandma would make me hamburgers, and chicken. And then just chicken, and then nothing. So it was gradual. Not everybody goes cold turkey. The next highest amounts were vegetarian or vegan, which makes sense because I am vegan and I occasionally make videos about it. If I made more videos about it, there'd probably be more people watching my channel and responding to this who identify that way, just because of the videos that we tend to watch about things that we're interested in. And then after that, we had some pescatarians and some people who have a lot of restrictions due to their allergies, but other than that, they eat most other things. So more like a, I can't eat it because I'm allergic to it, more so than a dietary choice. So I learned a lot from this survey. I learned that the majority of people watching my channel do identify very strongly with a lot of the identities that I hold, such as the majority being in my age group, the majority being from the United States, identifying as white, identifying as pagan, which, I mean, that makes sense because that's most of my content. More people identifying with solitary eclectic Wicca than with traditional Wicca, mostly women, a lot of bisexual identifiers, majority heterosexual still, but a lot of bisexual specifically. A lot of people who believe in fighting injustice and oppression, mostly people who don't have children, things like that. I also learned a little bit more about how everyone identifies, such as witches who do not identify as pagan in any way, folks who are part of minority identities who don't necessarily think that equality based on those identities is very important. I didn't know that A Course in Miracles was considered a religious identity, or at least that that person considers it so. I knew that there were some Christians who watched my channel, but you know, it's a good little handful of the people who responded to this survey, but then more than those, like a higher number of Buddhism and Native American spirituality, which I was not aware of. A lot of you, the biggest representative types of paganism, according to this survey, were general witchcraft, general paganism and neo-paganism, Celtic paganism, and eclectic solitary Wicca or eclecticism in general, which again also makes sense. So those are some of the things that I learned about my viewing audience, at least at the time that I did this survey, and now that I know about the Google Forms ones that I can make as long as I want and as involved as I want. No, I'm kidding. I'm trying not to make them too long. I know you guys don't like super long surveys, but I love surveys and I learn a lot from them. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned a little bit of something about the community that you're part of here. This is, you know, a little snapshot, again, little snapshot, 100 out of the hundreds who watch, out of the thousands who have subscribed. So this is a microcosm of the community, but somewhat illuminating about our little community here on my channel regardless, that hopefully we can learn a little bit from and see who else is here and what types of people and what types of views do they hold. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.